Haha. Hello and welcome to Sit and See. I'm Dr. Jared Jones, research specialties, ancient systems of meditation. You know the rest. Been a Buddhist a long time, also training in Taoism. Today, we're going to be doing a supplemental exercise, a bit of a short class today. So let's jump straight into it. So we'll do this from a seated position. So in your seated position, if you've done some retreat using the techniques that I teach, or you've done the techniques that I teach and done them fairly intensively, you'll know in particular that if you do a fair amount of Foundation 1 intensive breath meditation, and when you first start doing opening the sense gates, Foundation 4, you can find that you have some side effects, let's say, because you're creating change quite quickly in your system. The nervous system and the subtle body system need a little bit of time to adjust to the practice. And so this supplement is to help address some of the side effects that can come up if you're using techniques that work quite quickly to make changes in your system. So let's just start with a body scanning practice coming over from the Neigong tradition to move everything downward to make the system much more calm. So starting with the skull, everything around your face, the back of the head, the top of the neck. Just let it relax onto the neck. And then with the middle of the neck, let that relax onto the bottom of the neck. Anything that doesn't need to be there to hold the body in proper position. Then let the bottom of the neck settle onto the top of the spine. Elevate the elbows slightly, as we've discussed in previous classes. And then relax in particular the top of the shoulders and the back of the shoulders, but relax the weight of the shoulders also onto the top of the rib cage and the spine. Relax the biceps so that that weight is being carried by, again, top of the rib cage and the spine. Relax the elbows, forearms, wrists, palms, fingers. Now making your way down the chest, relax the barrel of the chest onto the diaphragm region. Relax the diaphragm region onto the waist. Relax the waist onto the pelvis. And relax the pelvis into the cushion. Relax the thighs into the knees. Relax the knees into the calves. Relax the calves into the ankles. Relax the ankles into the feet. And relax the feet. And now that your mind has traveled through the whole system, bring the mind's attention back to the waist. combining the waist and the pelvis into one object of meditation. Just let your awareness sink into that whole region of the body. For the sake of doing this exercise for the first couple of times, if you've never done this before, place your hands on your abdomen. And when you breathe deeply, you shouldn't be pushing your abdomen out. If anything, you want to aim your breath towards the back of the waist and the back of the hips, and breathe down into the lower abdomen and the pelvis. And unlike other exercises that I teach having to do with the breath, in this case, you do want to control your breath. And we'll do a technique called four corners breathing. So rather than counting with numbers, try to place your mind into the what I'll call the lower abdominal cavity, the waist and the pelvis combined. So placing your mind in there, see if you can feel your heartbeat in the lower part of the body. So to do four corners breathing, you're going to breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold, breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold. So that your breath forms four corners, you could say. So rather than counting the breath with numbers, you're going to keep the awareness in the lower abdomen, in the pelvis, and use the awareness of heartbeats and counting the heartbeats in the lower abdomen in order to keep time. So if the best you can do is count three heartbeats on each corner, then count three heartbeats breathing out, three heartbeats holding the breath, three heartbeats breathing in, three heartbeats holding the breath, and so on. If you can do more, then do more, but you shouldn't be too uncomfortable. If you want to push it a bit, you can put yourself on the edge of discomfort, but don't be too uncomfortable because we are trying to calm the nervous system down by extending the breath. So, once again, placing the mind in the waist and the pelvic region as one object of meditation. You're going to breathe into that area for now with the palms touching the abdomen so that you remember not to breathe into the front of the abdomen. Otherwise, you'll end up with a big, soft, distended belly like a pregnant person. Breathing mostly towards the back of the body. And then you're going to count the breath using the heartbeats as your barometer, as your measuring stick. The same number of heartbeats on each corner of the breath. So when I say begin, with relatively gentle attention, control the breathing, breathe deeply, count the breaths, follow the heartbeats. 3, 2, 1, begin. Okay. So when I teach retreat, when we're doing practice a bit more intensively, for example, in retreat, if we do a session where we do 3 rounds of intensive breath back to back, and then we do three more, and then we do three more in successive sessions, probably at some point we'll stop and take a break from that practice by doing this practice because you just bring so much extra blood and mm, what will feel somatically like pressure in the head. And so those of you who are doing a bit more of intensive breath at home, if you're doing 2 sessions or 3 sessions a day, or if you're combining sessions the way we did yesterday, sitting and standing, or combining them the way we did a few weeks ago, where we did 3 sessions back to back, you might find that you start getting light headaches that last for some period of time. So, one way to address that issue is to do a practice like this one, where you bring the mind down inside the body and you do something with lighter attention. It's still a good quality of focus, but you're bringing the awareness and some of that pressure that comes along with awareness down further inside the body. And especially if you do a releasing practice like we did, a Neigong practice. So in Neigong has a lot of meanings, internal skill, right? Neigong, or internal power, Neigong. We've described this in previous streams in this way. If you do a body scan in the way that I teach body scanning, you're not doing anything along with the scan. It's a bit like having a mirror that you're moving through the environment, and it simply reflects whatever happens to be there as you move the mirror through the environment. Or having a video camera, and you simply are passing the video camera through the environment of the tactile body, and it records or sees or reflects whatever happens to be there as you pass through. So the intent with a body scan, in the way that I use the terms in this class, is not to change things when you find them. It's to gain the skill of just observing what happens to be there in the tactile field. Neigong, you pass the mind through the body, but then as you pass through, you ask the body to do something, or you change something, or you're deliberately causing something to happen as you go through. So in the case of this Neigong, we were releasing extra tension that didn't need to be there, and we were releasing it downward through the body. So we released it from the top of the head down to the feet. So that kind of practice can be quite helpful if the mind is getting too tight, if your nervous system starts to feel a little hyper reactive from doing foundation 1, or from doing um, if you've been doing a lot of foundation 2 where you're doing conventional body scanning, if you do that with too much detail in the beginning, sometimes just doing the body scan with too much detail, where you're trying to get the mind into too many things, too small, too long, the your nervous system will almost blow you out of the meditation. Some of you have probably had this experience where you get halfway through or 3/4 of the way through a really detailed body scan, and you just have to quit. You feel fried. So that's a sign that the level of detail is too much. You need to zoom out and do bigger pieces for a little while and then zoom back in. So something that can be helpful to overcome the friedness, the hyperreactivity, the overstimulation from a body scan that's too intense, or from doing foundation 1 and doing a lot of it before your body and your nervous system have fully adjusted to being able to do something like this, or from doing foundation 4 where you're learning to open the sense gates and Your mind's just not used to having that much information coming in from the senses all the time. It's a lot of information, and normally you're filtering it out. And so it can be overstimulating in the beginning. And so having a practice like this where you release everything down the body and then you spend some time in the lower abdomen can be very calming for the nervous system. And the reason I don't teach this as one of the main practices for the five foundations is that it tends to make the mind more sleepy in the beginning, right? And if you have the problem that the mind is overstimulated, making the mind a little bit more sleepy is good. Making the mind a little more sleepy if the mind is already in the ordinary condition, maybe not so good. And of course, you can continue to elevate, continue to refine, continue to add different techniques and methods to working with the lower abdomen, which is an important part of 18 Lohan practice. It comes in at the level of working with Qi and Qigong, and the level of working with Shen if you're doing Neigong, or sorry, if you're doing Neidan, rather, internal alchemy, which I've said in previous streams, has basically, it's very significantly similar to really important aspects of Buddhist Tantra. Lots of work in the lower abdominal area. So, spending some time doing this kind of practice can help prepare your mind for those later types of practice. So, that's all I had planned for today. A Neigong practice releasing down through the body with a coarse level of granularity, not too detailed. And then a lower abdominal breathing practice where you're breathing with four corners using the heartbeat to monitor the length of time you've spent on each corner of the breath. Breathing in, holding the breath in, breathing out, holding the breath out. The same number of heartbeats for each breath. Likewise, keeping your awareness in the lower abdomen while doing that practice so that you're getting more and more and more of you, relatively speaking, in the same place. You're getting your breath in the lower abdomen. You're getting your mind's attention in the lower abdomen. And the demand you're placing on that attention is quite high because it has to monitor the feeling of the heartbeat inside the abdomen as well as the sensations of breathing inside the abdomen in order to successfully complete the exercise. And therefore, the degree of concentration you can generate from this kind of practice is relatively good. And since we're controlling the breath and making it slower correlates, generally speaking, to your nervous system as far as your nervous system is concerned. Having a slower breath correlates to being more calm. The calmer you are, the slower your breath. So, like this, uh, we're working with every tool that's available to try to get as much of you in one place as possible and put it all in a place that tends to make the whole system more calm. So there's enough detail there, enough richness there in that practice that it shouldn't make your mind too sleepy to do that aspect. If all you did was downward body scans in a seated position, you'd probably find yourself pretty sleepy pretty quickly. So that's why I don't teach that as the main thing for overcoming a little bit of headache or overstimulation from the other practices that I teach. Okay, I'll now turn it over to questions. Let's see. Looks like no questions came in so far. Ty, good to see you. Luck 108, good to see you. Okay. Well, if there are no questions, I'll probably wrap it up here. Keep it a relatively short class for today, Wednesday. So, meeting one of my teachers later tonight. Keep my mind fresh. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. This should be a nice little supplement if you find the mind getting a little bit too sort of intense from doing the other practices, or you find yourself getting a bit of a headache from doing too much intensive breath. If you're doing that practice really well, probably you'll get light headaches in the beginning. Then you can do this practice to settle the system down. Okay. All right. Thank you all for being here. Have a lovely evening. Thank you for attending. Cheers.